Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I wanted to talk about Antony and Cleopatra, and like my other videos, look at it through the lens of spirituality. I'll use Christianity, alchemy, and yoga philosophy to describe Antony and Cleopatra. So I would like to talk about the three primary characters: Antony, Cleopatra, and Caesar. Uh, what they represent symbolically, and then discuss some allusions to scripture, and then some of the themes of Antony and Cleopatra. So, Antony and Cleopatra is, in my opinion, one of the great plays of Shakespeare. I put it up there with Othello, Macbeth, King Lear, and Hamlet, the four great tragedies. And so we'll start with characters. So Antony, what does Antony represent symbolically? So I think Antony represents wisdom. Uh, Throughout the play, he is associated with certain objects. Those objects are the sun, gold, and the sword. And all three of these objects have been symbolic images for wisdom or reason. And wisdom is purified reason. You are able to discern the truth of things, and you are able to discern what is good for you internally and externally, as far as qualities, what qualities to develop, what qualities to overcome, and what behaviors to engage in, and what behaviors not to engage in. So the reason the sun is an image is wisdom is always the same, and truth is always the same, like the sun. And so that's why the sun is an image for wisdom. Gold is an image for wisdom because it's valuable. It's the most valuable thing for human beings, wisdom. Wisdom leads to truth. And the sword is an image for wisdom because a property of wisdom is being able to discern truth, what is real and what is unreal, what is true and what is false. So that's Antony. And again, throughout the play, characters will reference the sun to him. Gold will be referenced with regards to Antony. He'll talk about gold, and the sword too. Okay, Cleopatra. Cleopatra is symbolically, I think she is feeling. It's the feeling nature. In yoga philosophy, this is called chitta. It's not emotion, but it's the feeling property, of which emotion can color due to our likes and dislikes. Okay. In Cleopatra, she is associated with, like I mentioned, feeling, the moon, and silver. And silver has been associated, alchemically speaking, silver has been associated with intuition and feeling. And the moon is said to govern our feelings and emotions. And Antony refers to her as, I think, terrene moon, right? Earthly moon. The moon governs our earthly desires, our earthly feelings, our likes and our dislikes. Caesar, symbolically speaking, represents the universe or the world or worldly consciousness. I think all three. I think Shakespeare depicts him as worldly consciousness, but also the world itself. He is referred to as the universal landlord, desires universal peace, but for him, universal peace means Roman domination. There is in Act 3, excuse me, a scene where uh, Antony and Cleopatra are on a stage of silver, sitting in two chairs of gold. So here again, I think Shakespeare is adding just another image showing feeling and reason. Again, silver being the feeling nature, on top are two gold chairs, of which both are sitting in. And I think the gold chairs represent purity. So in alchemy, each alchemist had a goal of transmuting base elements into gold, which for them was the pure substance. So symbolically, this means transmuting or changing human desires into spiritual desires. Okay, elevating your consciousness from human consciousness to divine consciousness. So this is one of the themes of Antony and Cleopatra. So I did want to, like I mentioned, I wanted to bring in an allusion to scripture. So Antony um, says, "I am so lated in the world that I have lost my way forever. I have a ship laden with gold. Take that, divide, fly, make peace with Caesar." So lated meaning means darkened. So I am so darkened in the world that I have lost my way forever. So contextually speaking, he means I have lost my way as a soldier, right? I'm not fighting the battles that I should fight. And symbolically speaking, this also means not fighting the senses. That we as human beings, if we wish to elevate our consciousness to divine consciousness, we have to fight against certain behaviors and certain qualities and certain desires. We have to transcend them. We have to overcome them. And in the beginning of the play, Antony says as much. You know, he says, I must break free of these Egyptian fetters. So, as a side note, Egypt, for many in the West, has been symbolic of sensuality, of desires. And I think Shakespeare is painting Egypt as that Egypt is a place of revel, of indulging in the senses, and to an inordinate degree. And then I think he's painting Rome as a more disciplined country. It's the more militaristic, it's the more disciplined country. I think Shakespeare is using the two countries to paint those opposites, indulging in the senses and disciplining the senses. Also, interestingly enough, the play does start in Alexandria, and Alexandria was a place of alchemy. It was a center of alchemy. So the practice of transmutation. So Shakespeare is saying, although it's in the land of the senses, there is some transformation that's going to occur. Okay? So again, back to that quote, I am so lated in the world, I am darkened in the world. So I am in ignorance. So spiritually speaking, this would be the soul is in ignorance of itself due to engaging in the senses, due to engaging in the world. Okay. I have a ship laden with gold. So here again, Antony is associating himself with gold, or gold is being associated with Antony. So a ship can often be a symbol of the human body. So the gold within Antony, wisdom within Antony, he is advising others to take it and divide it. So I think this might be an image of wisdom being dissipated, of it being taken. and it reflects back to the previous sentence. I am so lated in the world. The world is darkening my wisdom. Fly and make peace with Caesar. Okay. So make peace with Caesar, I think in this sentence means involve yourself in the world. Okay. This whole sentence is about darkness, ignorance, lack of wisdom. And this could be a scriptural allusion to Mark chapter 12, verse 17. It says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So here, in the scriptural reference, it's painting that dichotomy of being in the world and being in the spiritual world. It's setting up the dichotomy of the world and spirit, which is again a theme of Antony and Cleopatra. Antony also says later, to the seaside straightway, I will possess you of that ship and treasure. And again, straightway in many scriptural in many scriptures, straightway is a reference to the spine. So that in the spine are the chakras, so that the spine is the location to ascend to higher consciousness. Okay? I will possess you of that ship and treasure. So a scriptural allusion could be Matthew chapter 13, verses 44 through 46. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in a field. And in yoga philosophy, the field, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, the body is referenced as the field. So that within the body there is a treasure. So that this is wisdom, this is the soul. The which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy therefore goeth and selleth all that he hath and buyeth that field. So again, this scriptural reference is saying selling all that he has. So this is a reference to not being attached to the world. And he go and buyeth the field, meaning he goeth and buyeth the spirituality. One's attention is no longer on the world, but it's turned around and brought to spirituality, brought to the soul. So again, we have the dichotomy of the world and spirit. So regarding yoga philosophy, so there are two elements that Antony and Cleopatra both speak of. So I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but Antony says something, I wish they would fight in fire and air. And later in the play, Cleopatra says, I am fire and air. My other elements I give to baser life. So fire in Eastern philosophy is prana, it's energy. Prana is what links materiality with spirituality. It's the doorway, it's the gateway. The more you are in contact with prana or able to control prana by controlling the senses, your consciousness elevates to spirit. Okay, so it's interesting that both characters are talking about the elements fire and air being the element of spirit. So that fire, energy, prana, becoming more aware of prana and gaining a greater capability of controlling fire leads you to spirit. So that's interesting that Antony and Cleopatra both talk about the elements fire and air. Okay. And Cleopatra. So Cleopatra, when she is set on killing herself, uh, primarily I think because Antony has died, she says, I have immortal longings in me. So I think Shakespeare uses that because consciousness becomes immortal when it transcends body identification. So, so again, here's a reference setting up the duality of the world, the baser elements into uh, taking a step back. She said, the baser elements I give to baser life. So again, she's beginning to transcend body identification. She's transcending the senses. Okay. Again, when she is about to kill herself, she says, I have immortal longings in me. I'm beginning to yearn for spirit, no longer yearning for the earth. And I think it's significant too that she's killed by asps or snakes. As I've mentioned in other videos, snakes are an ancient symbol of Kundalini. And that, so there is Kundalini is the energy, is the prana that rises up the spine. And the higher it rises, the higher your consciousness is. You attain to a higher consciousness. Mm. And towards the end, uh, Caesar, like I mentioned, Caesar represents worldly consciousness or represents the world itself or the universe itself. And towards the end of the play, Caesar has defeated Cleopatra and Antony, and this is after Antony has died. He wants to be seen as a great giver to Cleopatra. Essentially, that Cleopatra, whatever you want, I'm going to give you. All the while, it's a ruse in order to make her a slave, essentially, and bring her before the Roman people to show Caesar's victory, his victory over Cleopatra. And so I think what symbolically this means is what Shakespeare is saying is that the world pretends to offer gifts, and it offers gifts in the form of pleasure. And that the more we engage in the world, the more we engage in pleasure, habit develops. And through habit, you become a slave to those impulses, to those desires, to those worldly desires. So the world, in a pretense, offers gifts, essentially pleasures, but they are short-lived, they're transient, but if engaged in over and over again, creates a habit which then enslaves consciousness to that. So, and particularly it's your feeling nature. It enslaves your feeling nature. You feel you need to have certain things. So I think this is the symbolic or allegorical meaning of Caesar trying to pretend to be a gift giver to Cleopatra, but then eventually leading her as a slave through the streets of Rome. So I think that is kind of the story in a nutshell, symbolically speaking. Then a couple of themes. So, well, just to reiterate, so I think one of the great themes, symbolically speaking, is it, Antony and Cleopatra is a play about being in the world or being in spirit. So choosing which is more valuable to you. And Shakespeare obviously is saying being spiritual is the better course to take. Okay, so that's one of the great themes. Essentially transcending body consciousness, mortal consciousness, transmuting it, changing it into immortal consciousness. And this is done through right behavior. And I think behavior is also mentioned throughout Antony and Cleopatra, especially the word square. Square for Freemasons, the square of the Freemasons is an image of right behavior. And the square is mentioned, I think either two or, a handful of times throughout Antony and Cleopatra, at least twice. Mhm. And the other great theme is love. What kind of love is Shakespeare talking about? And I think he is asking us as readers to discern that. So in the beginning of the play, love seems to be associated again with pleasure. Antony and Cleopatra want to engage in a lot of revelry, a lot of partying, a lot of sensual things. And you can tell too that their love is selfish, uh, and that their love creates a lot of discord, a lot of fighting between the two. So I think what Shakespeare's trying to say is that human love, although it has some benefit, is probably not the love we are truly seeking or that we truly need. In the beginning of the play, after Antony has reported to Cleopatra that Fulvia has died, his wife, Antony's wife has died, Fulvia. Cleopatra says, "Well, that is false love because you are not crying. Essentially, you are not mourning her death, and I see how I will not be mourned when I die." So again, she's saying false love with Antony. Later in the play, when Antony is being armed by his armorer, uh, the name of the armorer is Eros, Eros. And Eros has many shades of meaning, but one of the meanings is divine love. And and I think in this context, Shakespeare is saying it is Eros who arms you. Right? In that same scene, he says to Cleopatra, "Thou art the armorer of my heart." But in the next sentence, he says, "False, false, this." And again, I think when Shakespeare is doubling his words, he's asking you to really pay attention to that. And so I think he's saying that human love is rooted in selfishness and is not real love. The true love, the real love, is divine love. His armorer is Eros, is divine love. And this is akin to, again, another scriptural reference. This is Ephesians 10:11. Put on the whole armor of God. And of course, God is described by St. John as love. Love is God, God is love. Put on the whole armor of love, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And the wiles of the devil are the senses, the desires, the senses of the world, the desires of the world. And so Shakespeare, I think, is saying through divine love, you will transcend earthly desires and you will also ascend to a higher state of consciousness through divine love. Now, in the East and in Christianity, when read closely, you achieve divine love again through right behavior and through meditation. So, of course, this is not easy to do, to maintain a meditative heart all day, every day, but you have to start somewhere. So we all have to try to meditate and behave rightly, which is of course not always easy and something we all need to work on daily. And some battles you will lose, some days you will lose the battle, and some days you will win. And eventually I think we all will win. So again, I think the two great themes are truth, um, wisdom, being able to using wisdom to purify feeling in order to transcend earthly desires, earthly consciousness, mortal consciousness, and then through the power of divine love, transcending those things and reaching a higher state of consciousness, which is essentially oneness with the Christ consciousness, with the Krishna consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, which then leads you to God consciousness. So I think I'll leave it there. Those are my thoughts on Antony and Cleopatra, seen from a more allegorical, symbolic lens. Let me know what you think of Antony and Cleopatra. What are some of your thoughts of the play? And please like and subscribe. It greatly helps the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Bye.